Okay, here's an update, a second update on the SolarWinds FireEye type of hack. Well, first of all, this video is about giving you, from a curator perspective, tips on how to detect and how to deal with these things. When I express my opinion based on what I read, that's the only information that I have. It's public information, so that will save you some reading here and there. I'm not gonna. The comments I make are not meant to criticize anybody. I think that this can happen to any company out there. I'm nobody to criticize the practice of the companies involved here. Again, to give you tips and a little bit of background. So the reason why SolarWinds had access or has access to so very many things, and that's why those things were compromised, is because it relies on a very old protocol called Simple Network Management Protocol. The idea was to deal with, originally it was with networking equipment, but it kept evolving and way too much. So for example, you can do things like query a system for CPU utilization, for hard disk space, even on a printer. Does the printer is low on toner? Right? But most important to the attack is that you can look at firewall rules. And by the way, in SNMP there is of course read-only, which is the get, and also the write, which is the set. So you can change firewall rules, and that can be some of the things that the bad guys actually did. But more importantly than that is the fact that SNMP has evolved and does a lot of things with systems. Let me actually share a link of something that I was looking upon. So when I searched for SolarWinds and Active Directory, I found this, right? Even a free download of this application, and as you can see, even provides you access to not just Windows systems, but also Linux as well, and Office 365, which a lot of emails has been read from many organizations, and that seems to be the pattern. So this idea of using SNMP to gather a lot of it. This tool, I'm sure that it was actually very good in providing you visibility, and that's what has been so widely used. But you need to think, what happens if any one of my apps, not just this one, but any one of my apps is actually compromised? If this thing has, which is the case, passwords to access Office 365 to get management information about it, Windows and Linux systems, and many other apps, as they say here, 1,200 plus apps. Well, that's the single keys to the kingdom, and then that might be something that we may have learned now, that very risky to have apps that have password access, even if it's read-only, but into so very many things. But even on the traditional side of the SNMP, it is easy with this level of access, in the same way that the tool does it, for a bad guy now to get the network topology, which is something that you don't want people to know about it. As I mentioned before, you can change firewall rules to allow, for example, an attacker and to open a particular port to a particular IP address from the attacker to get into your network. You can set proxy type of devices to do man-in-the-middle type of attacks, like you get your own blue code type of thing. So the capabilities and the way and the support for SNMP that has evolved is really tremendous. So this is to explain what this thing was so difficult, and why we always need to think, for even with Curator, if my Curator is compromised, what access do people have? Well, they get a lot of logs and flows and all that data, but Curator doesn't store password for systems. So but any application that does, you need to revise that. Now there are other aspects that I'm not gonna be talking about, like lately supply chain, right? And how these guys, apparently there's another Czech company that that the guys from SolarWind used to update their software. And apparently that's where they found a crack in it and were able to infect versions of SolarWind that gave the attackers all that information. And I mentioned just this because I'm not going to discuss that. I'm not knowledgeable enough to know all the details of it. But in many cases, you will be provided with hashes of DLLs, of libraries, that has been compromised. And you definitely want to make sure that you can detect those, and more on that later. Another thing I'm not going to be talking about is attribution. Why? Well, because first of all, I have no ways of really knowing other than the stuff I read, and apparently the intelligence community is pretty sure that it's the Russians that were behind this. But attribution is always hard. But the important thing, I don't care whether it's really the Russians or whatever. You need to assume, and more on that later on what you can do with Curator, is that a lot of people have access to that. A lot of people, many companies had SolarWinds as a product, and you need to assume that the bad guys got access to it, and more on that again later. But the most important thing that the bad guys did with this tool was obviously, after they get into the system, do a lateral movement. Once they get in, they move around to find other things. How can Curator help? Well, I don't know if you've seen my videos, but I have spoken very highly of an application called Use Case Manager. I really love this application. So let's actually use in my demo system the Use Case Manager to find rules in Curator that deals with lateral movement, that helps me locate lateral movement. Let's actually do that. So I'm here in my Use Case Manager, which I updated recently, and it's important that you do that because you want the latest set of rules in the air. But let's actually go in it. And how would I look for lateral movement? Well, one way is actually go here into the filters on the tactic. I know there is a tactic called lateral movement, right? So let's actually go in the pull down and look here for it. And here it is, lateral movement. So Curator, give me all the rules that I have in my system that has anything to do with lateral movement. And look at that, there are 32 rules. And here you can check which of them are enabled, which you need to enable, all those details. And again, there are separate videos on the Use Case Manager I have done recently on it. This is not all. What is it that is available on the App Exchange regarding Curator rules for lateral movement? Well, it will be very hard to look, this thing is so popular that it's hard to look there anymore. But if I go back to my Use Case Manager, all I need to do is click on this button that I have right there. Say, well, please show me also the ones that I don't have installed but exist that has lateral movement as a tactic for MITRE, right there. And that 32 number becomes 59. This is that good. Now you can actually see, and if you want to see just the one you don't have installed, after you have analyzed the one that you have installed, make sure they're enabled and all that, you can even click on this button and see those that you can potentially install and in which package they are, and all that, goodness for it. Look at that. Again, you can actually go here on the wheel and select the name of the package, and you can see if you are interested in one of these rules to add it to your Curator set, what is the name of the package, so you can go directly and get it. Another important thing is make sure that your apps, like the Use Case Manager and any other app that you have, because there might be some that were updated just because of this attack, are really up to date. Okay, how do you make sure that that is the case? Well, there is an easier way and a hard way. The hard way is to go into the App Exchange and compare one by one, and the easiest way is to go here on the Use Case Manager app, and this guy will do it automatically for me. If I go here on the applications, it's going to look at several things. First of all, the ones that I have already installed that have updates that I have not applied. And I'm pretty sure, since I took some vacation off, that there are some things that I need to update in my system. And here we have, I have 8 apps. Well, look at that, even the use case manager. So all these apps, the properties from Microsoft, all these comply. I mean, actually, it just updated. Yeah, the use case manager is 3.1 is up to date. So, these apps, 7 of them needs to be that security threat monitor. I mean, these are things that you definitely want to have updated, but also, and then by just doing update here, you can update them all. But very important is that your DSMs, your parsers, are up to date. So make sure that you have run auto updates, because the IBM developers, I'm sure that they work very diligently in making sure that they update the parsers to grab the important pieces of information. So let's go back to the whiteboard. And I'll show some examples where everywhere that you look, whether it's within QReader or even outside QReader, and you see lots of indications for hashes. Hashes are very important. Let me rewrite that. And when you think within QReader on hashes, nothing better than QNI, because this baby, on anything that has QReader has visibility, it will compute automatically hashes, and that's not the only source of hashes. I mean, Sismon, more on that later, has sent you hashes. Many EDR technologies give you hashes, and by the way, yeah, when you have your DSMs up to date, then you can be more certain that, for example, if you use Symantec, McAfee, any one of those EDR technologies, Carbon Black, etc., that you're going to get everything on that parser to grab those things, among them hashes. Again, QNI, and I've done many videos on QNI, great technology for detecting hashes. So if you look at an indication, say, well, this DLL with this particular hash is indication that your software has been, your version of SolarWinds has been compromised. Well, in QNI, you can easily do a search in it. But what is it? What do you do if it's not in data that is visible to QRadar? Well, then that's where tools like Cloud Pak for Security can definitely help. Let me actually go there to my instance of it. So this is my instance of Cloud Pak for Security, and I can use Data Explorer in here. And if I patch any hash that I have kept in somewhere, actually paste it here, it automatically says, well, that's an SHA-1 based on the length of it, and you can specify the time, and you can go here, and I only have here QReader and AWS, but if your Cloud Pak instance has access to your Splunk, if you use Splunk or whatever other tool that you have, there are connectors for Cloud Pak for Security that can actually perform this search in minutes, rather than you going into every individual tool and look for all that data. So I already mentioned Sismon. I mean, you see my videos. If you have, you know how much I love this extension. It's a free stuff that you add to your QReader, and this gives you enough visibility within Windows logs to detect things like lateral movement. And I have done many videos when I move laterally and show how Sismon detected. Another thing that you should revise is your privilege management apps that handles the password. And if you send those logs to QRadar, there are many things that you can actually detect. So anecdotally, from what I read, this all came to light because the bad guys who compromised the SolarWinds instance that the guys at FireEye used, they were going into some tools, and apparently they got some pen testing tools from them, but then when they were moving around, and this is what I read, again, I have no way of knowing, this is public information. What they detected is that there was an attempt for accessing one app, and these guys were clever enough to have multi-factor authentication for accessing it. But guess what? they apparently discovered that one of the researchers in FireEye was on vacation, and there was a request to provide a multi-factor authentication that was never fulfilled because the bad guys couldn't get access to it. And the guys from FireEye investigated that. Yeah, that's a clever thing to do. Again, this gives you an idea of the power of doing the right type of investigation. Now let's talk about the threat app, the threat intel app in QRadar. Now again, I've done videos on it, but this is the way for you to search rapidly within the things that QRadar has visibility on threat intel that the guys from X4 has. So, and here in my threat intelligence app within QRadar, and as you know, these fellows from the X4 team research these and compile all this stuff for you. So let me show you how easy it is to search for that. So if I were to search in here, which I already did for SolarWinds, I found 2 collections. And let's say that I'm interested on this one, right? Which is the most recent one. This one seems to be very old. But all you need to do, and this is spectacular, is click here, scan now. And this performs a search in your QRadar from all the IOCs that are in this collection. And if you go to this collection, I'm sure you're going to find a ton of DLLs, hashes of this and that. And well, the easiest way for you to deal with that is to do that scan, and that performs one heck of a AQL search in your QRadar system and looks for that. So in my case, obviously, this is a demo system. This was not compromised. But you can see, you can get an appreciation of the type of search that you will have to do manually if you don't use the threat intelligence app, which I don't see any reason why you should not. And if you want to manually download those specific IOCs, you can actually click on this button and go into that feed. And again, I've done videos on the threat intelligence app. This takes a while because it's making that query, and you can manually, if you want, import those IOCs, hashes, URLs, IPs, etc. into the reference tables in QRadar. Another thing you can do is go into, I mean, this stuff does it automatically for you, but if you, for example, want to do more searches on Cloud Pak for Security with Data Explorer, on other sources and other stuff, you may want to go into, for example, the FireEye Indicators. So here I am on this public GitHub that FireEye put up there about the Sunburst. That's the name that they gave to this malware. And here you have all these IOCs. And what I like about this particular thing is that it has the first seen and last seen. So if you are performing a search in Cloud Pak for Security on a particular system, you can restrict the search based on these time frames. So that's what I like about this particular thing that FireEye put together. And this video is already getting way too long. Another thing I want you to think about it is Canary or Honeypots type of application, and not just because of the SolarWinds, but this is something that should be common practice. And I've never done a video on this, so I'm going to be brief. So for example, if you have the advantage of having a technology like Guardium that helps you protect databases, what I encourage you to do is to create databases with sanitized data that look about sensible things that the bad guys would like to get from you and your company. And then put a simple Guardium policy that indicates, well, if anyone accesses this app, select or whatever mechanism for accessing that database, then you put a policy that say, well, send a single log to QRadar when that happens, because this stuff is fake and nobody should be using that. So that is something that you actually may want to do, and is very easily done. And then when you get that particular log into QRadar, you set simply a rule that fires an offense, and most likely you may want to combine that with going into UBA and see, well, what was the user ID that the bad guys are using? So this one, oh, let me actually search in UBA what else this particular user ID has done. And I have, in the way that I have shown in previous videos, that's trivial to do in UBA. So again, 20 minutes is way too long. I just wanted to give you this is my personal view on the things that I will do with QRadar based on what I have read. This is all public information on how to better use QRadar to deal with not just the solar wind for things, and this is an arms race, so we all are learning from these things from going on into the future.